What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us today on Cinema Recap. Looks like we're going to check out a Thai action film called Legend of the Broken Sword Hero. Jeez, sounds awesome. Spoilers ahead. We open the film on our main character, a hardened young warrior named Tongdi, running full pelt away from some soldiers on horseback. We then cut back to an earlier period in young Tongdi's life, where we see that running away from trouble is very on brand for him. He manages to duck behind an overweight woman's big fat butt, which sees the other kids plow into her and becomes stuck right in her crack. He laughs and she turns around to scold him, but then hesitates when she sees who one of the boys is. From there, Tongdi hurries over to the local dojo to watch some of the older boys box and spar. He's desperate to join in, but the master tells him to go home and have his father teach him to fight. His father is a great warrior, but Tongdi says that his father won't teach him and begs for lessons. The master relents and starts to teach a few moves, but wouldn't you know it, this is the perfect time for Tongdi's father to come around the corner, catch him boxing, and then scold him for wanting to fight. After that, it's a little more scolding from his father. The last thing he wants is his son following down in his footsteps. A local monk tries to convince his father to relent and let him fight, but his father's not having it. Now Tongdi doesn't give a damn and sneaks off to train by himself anyway. Later on, those same boys who were chasing Tongdi earlier are sitting about coming up with ways to bully and pick on the kid when he least expects it. Turns out that one of them is a governor's son. Soon the boys are chasing him once again. Only this time he turns around and challenges him to a fight. It's 5 against 1, but Tongdi's pretty crafty and manages to fight all of them. And then when it's just him and the gov's son, he throws a kick right at his chest and sends him flying. It should be a happy moment, but this kid threatens Tongdi and he has no choice but to leave home forever. Now we cut to several years later, that same scene from the start of the film. Turns out that these men are those same boys that were teasing Tongdi earlier, and now they're looking to finish him off. They really know how to hold a grudge, but our boy's a little older now, a little wiser. He lures them into a trap and beats them all up. And then just to rub salt on that wound, he steals their horse. The governor's son does the only thing he can do. He goes and tells daddy what he did, but his father's scolding him for being a pussy and letting one man beat so many of them up. Meanwhile, Tongdi wanders into a small village where a fighting competition's taking place. Fancying his own skills, Tongdi challenges the fighter and takes him down with a single punch. The local master can't believe his luck and immediately takes this guy under his wing. This sees our man go on a fighting adventure, entering numerous small contests and completely wiping the floor with them. Yeah, he's making a name for himself and loving it. Unfortunately, it all goes to his head. And pretty soon he's prancing around like he can't lose. That's until a random fighter approaches him and challenges him to a fight. At first, Tongdi and his new master aren't so sure because this challenger isn't some poor villager, but a full-on soldier. Now the challenger pulls out his purse, and money talks in this world, so Tongdi accepts. It takes about a second for us to realize that Tongdi probably should have turned the fight down. This new challenger wipes the floor with him, completely humiliates him, and shows that maybe Tongdi isn't so great after all. Our man ends up passed out in the lake, and to make matters worse, his own master abandons him because he doesn't train with losers. It's lucky then that a random vagrant is there to pull Tongdi out of the water and save him. He then tells him what his problem is, that he needs to train with a proper master and hone his technique. He's gifted, but raw and untrained. Tongdi sees the logic in this and agrees. His first port of call is a small village that he just happens to come upon. Tongdi spies a training school taking place, and rather than asking if he can join, he just sneaks in and starts training with him. Well, the master catches him, calls him out, but Tongdi apologizes and says that he just wants to learn from the best. The master agrees to teach him. It becomes obvious pretty quick that Tongdi is head and shoulders above everyone, and with the right training, he just keeps improving. Even the master takes a liking to him, seeing in Tongdi a real fighter that might one day make something of himself. But the good times can't last forever, and soon the village is set upon by a group of soldiers, and the villagers gather around. The master of the fighting school confronts him and asks what the hell they're doing. They tell him that they come in peace and no one will be harmed so long as they hand over Tongdi. It's now that we see the governor's son is with the soldiers. The master tries to convince the soldiers that Tongdi isn't here, but they become violent, and soon our man steps forward and surrenders himself. He doesn't want anyone else to get hurt. Unfortunately, the soldiers are kinda dicks and announce that they're gonna burn the village down anyways. This doesn't sit right with the villagers, and the soldiers really should have checked this village out before attacking it. The reason being being that this village is full of fighters, and they manage to overpower the army and send them packing. Tail between their legs and everything. Tongdi thanks the villagers for their help, and the master tells him that he needs to keep traveling, keep learning from other fighters so that he can become the best fighter possible. Our man couldn't agree more. Now Tongdi decides that his next stop will be the village of Ban Ta So, where he's gonna go and learn the art of speed boxing. He starts his way there, walking through the forest, only to realize that he's being followed. This is Bunkert, another fighter from the village that Tongdi just came from. He claims that he wasn't following him. Our boy doesn't believe him for 1 minute, but Bunkert insists. And besides, one look at this guy and we sense that he's gonna be a bit of a hanger-on. In other words, wherever our man goes, Bunkert's with him. Next up, we got the two coming upon a small village where they notice that a Chinese theater show is being set up for later. They hurry over to take a look, and this is where they meet a woman who will affectionately be known as Little Sis. She's half Chinese, half Thai, and tells them to come back and watch the show later on. So they do. Tongdi's blown away by the show, particularly the acrobatic talent show by Little Sis's grandfather. After the show, he goes backstage and asks the grandfather if maybe he can teach him how to do those moves he was performing earlier. Looks like Tongdi just wants to learn everything. The grandfather tells him no, but this is Tongdi, so he's not giving up easily. Now the next night, he secretly dresses up as one of the performers and goes onto the stage as if he might be able to trick the grandfather. Well, he doesn't trick him, but Tongdi's presence on stage is so popular with the people that the grandfather realizes he can't be too mad with him for interrupting his show. That night, they have a feast together and laugh the whole thing off. The next morning, Bunkert wakes to find that Tongdi has left him. He's pretty upset, but Little Sis has a good laugh at his expense, so it's alright. Meanwhile, a mysterious carriage is making its way through the jungle, only to be set upon by a group of Burmese soldiers. There's some beautiful women in that carriage, and we get the sense that the soldiers are really there for them. And it doesn't look good either. That is until Tongdi comes out of nowhere. Using the new moves he picked up, he effortlessly beats back the soldiers with nothing more than his bare hands. Naturally, the women are pretty taken by Tongdi. One in particular, her name is Ramyong, and in thanks for what Tongdi did, she wants to reward him. He says no though, because he doesn't do good things just for the sake of a reward, but she's insisting and gives him a special ring of hers. She tells him that it's not for him to keep, but just to look after for a while. I don't know guys, think she likes him. Tongdi couldn't look more excited by this, and we just know that she's gonna be on his mind for a while. Hopefully they bump into one another again sometime soon. But it's back to the fighting life after that, and pretty soon Tongdi finds himself in the village of Ban Ta So. He finds the master of the school and asks if he can train there. The master agrees, but only if Tongdi can beat another disciple. The two fight and of course, Tongdi wipes the floor with him. The master and everyone else claps and says that of course Tongdi can train with him. In fact, they just had another disciple join him the previous day. It's Bunkert. He's already there somehow and just so excited to see Tongdi. Training gets underway, and despite there being a whole group of other fighters there to train, the master takes an immediate liking to our man. They train together, and slowly Tongdi hones his new skills. Meanwhile, the master announces that there's a competition coming up soon between a lot of the local fighting schools. This is a big deal. Really, they just need one good fighter, and the master immediately singles out Tongdi. Our man, always up for a challenge, accepts and gets about increasing his training. A few days pass, and Tongdi and the others arrive at the town where the competition's taking place. There, Lil Sis just happens to pop up, and what should be a happy reunion becomes even more so when Tongdi suddenly sees Ramyong wandering the street. He's been pinning after her ever since that day he saved her life, and now he's gonna cash in. They spend the day together, just walking and talking, getting to know one another a little more. She tells him about her uncle, who's also a great fighter. She even suggests that one day she might introduce the two. Our man tries to return the ring to her, but she tells him to hang on to it a little longer, implying that she wants to see him once more. By the time that date's over, Tongdi's looking mighty pleased with himself.
แม่หญิงเนี่ยพูดจาเข้าใจยากนัก
Later that day, and the fighting competition is underway. It's not looking good for our school, who's getting thrashed by their main competitor. It's so bad that their master even starts to mock them for being such losers. Enter Tongdi. Our boy stands up to their best fighter, Took, a bigger and stronger competitor by far. But Tongdi isn't messing around and beats this dude pretty damn easily. This sends a shock through the competition, and the master of the school demands that he fight Tongdi too, otherwise the victory doesn't count. Our boy obliges and promptly wipes the floor with him. Now the master of the Baanta school is so grateful to Tongdi for his victory that he then writes for him a letter of recommendation to another school in which to train, this one specializing in swordcraft. Now Tongdi and Bunkert set out to find this new school, and on the way they come across little Sis and Took, both of them who also want to learn how to fight with the sword. As such, our four fighters team up and head off together. They get to the new school, and right away things seem off. It's small and empty and dirty, and the few people there don't really look like fighters. The master especially, looking like an old withered drunk that looks as if he can barely stand, let alone teach him. But he laughs him off and tells him that if they can disarm him in a sword fight, he'll train him. But if not, they have to buy him wine. Well, despite his frail and aged body, the sword master proves himself a master and easily defeats both Tuik and Tongdi. This guy's the real deal, and it's because of this that Tongdi agrees to train under him. So they're training under him for some time, becoming better and better. Soon they become so good that the master admits he can't teach them anymore. He gives them their own weapons as thanks, and then sends them on their way, off to a new school to train at. Unfortunately, the four-fighter journey is set to take an unsuspecting twist. As they walk through the jungle, they're set upon a group of bandits. One of the bandits shoots Bunkert from afar, and then the rest charge in for a full-on brawl. A moment later and we realize these aren't bandits, but the governor's son from earlier. Dude really has it in for Tongdi. Tuck and the others easily defeat the foot soldiers, while Tongdi manages to once again outfight the governor's son. He doesn't kill him though. Beating him so easily was punishment enough, but Bunkert is wounded, and the gunshot he took is slowly killing him. In order to save him, Tongdi throws his friend on the back of his horse and races to the closest village, demanding and begging for anyone to help save him. Unfortunately, our boy is broke. Now he tries to use the ring that Ram Young gave him, but this just seems to insult him. He sets a couple of men on Tongdi to teach him a lesson. Despite the other men having swords, Tongdi beats him back and then demands once more that they help his friend. This time another random villager steps in and offers to help. He carries Bunkert to a hospital, and it looks like Bunkert might actually be alright. Thank God for Tongdi's fighting moves. Now as Tongdi waits to see if Bunkert's alright, he's surprised to see Ram Young appear. She heard about that fight he won, and she came to see him. They go on another date, and she tells Tongdi about the new governor of Thailand and the big fight competition he's hosting. This will have all the best fighters in the country there, and Tongdi should compete. Now it's the day before the fight, and the fighters are gathered around, waiting to see who will get picked and who they will fight. Surprisingly, one of the fighters is that same guy who beat Tongdi all those months ago. He taunts our boy into accepting his challenge, and Tongdi's left with no choice. Now the next day is the day of the big fight. Tuik is the first to fight, and he easily beats back his challenger. But then it's up to Tongdi, and everyone knows that the man he has to fight, the master, is going to be much more difficult. But this is Tongdi we're dealing with. The two men fight, and somehow Tongdi manages to overpower and beat him. The governor can't believe this and asks our boy if he'll fight another master of his. Tongdi's like, yeah, and it's the same story. He beats this guy down, proving himself to be the best. But we already knew that. After the fighting's over, a ceremony's hosted, so the governor can shower the winner with riches. But this whole ceremony is soon interrupted by some bandits. They straight shoot the governor and attack the fighters, causing mayhem. But then Tongdi gets involved and manages to overpower their leader. He's given the chance to pop this guy point blank, but decides not to. He shows mercy. It's lucky that he did, because the bandit leader turns out to be the real governor of Thailand. This was all a ruse to see what kind of man Tongdi was, but he proved himself worthy. The governor asks him to join his personal staff and lead armies with him. Our man, however, turns him down. He's a wanderer and doesn't want to be trapped for the rest of his life. Well, the governor's crafty and challenges Tongdi to a fight. If our man loses the fight, he has to join the governor's army. Tongdi accepts, and although we don't get to see the fight, we do cut forward several years later to show our man on a horse, wearing his military regalia, clearly having lost the fight and now working for the governor. Now, cut forward a few more years, and our man returns to his home village. He drops to his knees, says hello to his family who he hasn't seen in years. He left them an innocent child, and has now returned a man of the world, not to mention the best fighter in Thailand. Thanks for chilling with us, guys, on the recap of Legend of the Broken Sword Hero, produced by Bin Boom Business Co. Limited, released back in 2017, directed by Bin Boonlarit. It stars Waka Banchamik, Vanapum Songsuparp, and Sorensen Maniwan. Sorry about your names. Now, this was a movie with a lot of great fight scenes, guys. Which fight move and scene was the best? Why don't you go ahead and tell us with the hashtag Cinema Recap in the comments. As always, till next time.